Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be doing February 2022's edition of F&I Insights, hosted by Bob Harkins, Vice President of Training at AGWS, and we will be discussing the 2022 regulatory maze, the hostile environment threats, and the hostile environment compliance efforts. Thank you, Bob. I'm going to turn it over to you now. Enjoy, guys.
Thank you very much, John Anderson. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to F&I Insights, February 2022 model. Before we get started with this finance and insurance and the law and regulatory maze, let's talk a quick bit about just what we came through the last several years and what was just announced a few weeks ago. And that is the verdict is in, the numbers have been counted, and as far as new car and light truck sales for last year, 2021, we came in at 14.9 million new cars and light trucks. 14.9 million new cars and light trucks. That obviously was a COVID year. The year before that, 2020, was certainly much worse. We came in at 14.4 million new cars and light trucks. So the past 2 years with COVID, 14.4 and 14.9. But many of you, in fact, most of you, I'm sure, were in our industry or business from 2015 through 2019, and you may remember those years because they were the best 5 years ever as it relates to new car and light truck sales. 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19 all were above 17 million new cars and light trucks. And the year 2016 was the best year ever in our industry. We came in at 17.6 million new cars and light trucks as well. So again, now what a great time to be a part of the retail automobile industry we're getting into today. What many people will tell you, certainly after we get past COVID and after we talk about Delta and Omicron, whatever, what I hear around the country and talking to our dealer partners and people at NADA and AFIP, the law firm of Hudson Cook, my good friend Gil Vanover, the author of Automotive Compliance in the Digital World, is still the number one hot button topic in our industry today, truly is. F&I in the law, selling with integrity, and the need for every dealership in America to establish an in-house, effective, and ongoing compliance and ethics program, now commonly referred to as a CMS or compliance management system. By the way, as we get into this, let me just tell you that the NADA forecast for this year, 2022, also Edmunds.com and Automotive News are pretty much saying the same thing, and we're looking at 15.4 million new cars and light trucks. So again, a lot enters into that as far as production and chips and things of that nature, but at least for the first quarter of this year, they're still sticking with 15.4 million new cars and light trucks. Well, let's talk about this regulatory maze. I want to give you information primarily today, this month, to kick off the year with respect to F&I in the law, information from NADA and also information from the law firm of Hudson Cook, and the new, recently released in December, 9th edition of Car Law, the F&I legal desk book. I hold in my hand from NADA the regulatory maze. The regulatory maze. NADA publishes this every year. I remember 3 years ago when I got mine, before I opened it up, I said to myself, hey, is this going to be the year that we finally, as an industry, as it relates to the annual report on federal regulations, do we exceed triple digits, meaning over 100 federal laws? And that did happen 3 years ago. When I got mine this year, and this was out in January, and before I opened it up, and I said, well, I wonder if we added any, and the answer is that we did. And right now for 2022, the annual report on federal regulations is 103. So we are under the umbrella of 103 federal regulations as a new car dealership. And that doesn't include state, local, some of you have county things that you have to comply with as well, but 103 federal. I know many times I hear from those of you that watch this series on a regular basis that are compliance officers, and the way the NADA has it broken down this year is kind of interesting. As far as the 103, they break it down into 6 sections or segments. And segment number 1 is Service and Parts Department. And Service and Parts Department, there's 16 federal regulations that we are under the umbrella of. Body Shop is 7 regulations we are under the umbrella of. All departments, defined all department / customer, there's 15 federal regulations that we are under the umbrella of. Then the last 3, the F&I department is 10, And then the big one is all departments / general management personnel, That would be 34 federal regulations. And last but not least, new and used vehicle sales department is 21. So ladies and gentlemen, you add all those together, and we have 103 federal regulations that we need to look at and comply with because we are under the umbrella of. This publication is 12 or 13 pages. After you get past the title page here, the rest of the pages really give you a brief explanation of all 103 of these regulations. So again, if you're a compliance officer, general manager, dealer, a trainer for your organization, whatever, this is a great piece to have to share with your people exactly now what the regulatory base is as it relates to 2022. You can get this by going directly to NADA.org and be able to pull that up. Also from NADA, a lot of the buzz right now is the amended final safeguards rule. Which has been announced and is really ready to go. The amended final safeguards rule, there's a ton of information out on this. My personal favorite is the information that NADA publishes, NADA Legal, the Management Education, Regulatory Affairs. I hold in my hand just really a 7-page bulletin that they call it preliminary FAQs, frequently asked questions, amended final safeguards rule. You can pull that up at NADA.org as well and get the entire really over 60-page document as it relates to what we have to go through. The final drop-dead compliance date for this, is December 9th. December 9th, 2022. So, we think about that date and it's a long way away, but obviously that's going to be here before we know it. Someone said recently in a meeting I was in a couple weeks ago, if we wait till after Thanksgiving to start this project, it's going to be not only very costly, number one, but number two, you're probably not going to have it done. December 9th, 2022 is the final drop dead date. One paragraph that really has a lot of people concerned about this, and permit me to read this from the amended safeguards rule. It says, under what has changed? Here we go. In addition, dealers must ensure that any of their vendors that access any customer data must also comply with these same requirements. And dealers must audit them for compliance. So dealers, you have that audit responsibility for compliance. Here's the kicker though. If a dealer is unable to do so, the FTC, Federal Trade Commission obviously, has said that the dealer may no longer engage that vendor. So if we cannot audit them, the FTC says the dealer may no longer engage that vendor. So, the initial recommendation for this certainly is you talk to your attorneys, your house counsel, talk to your vendor personnel, and certainly get their input as it relates to what's going on as far as the amended final safeguards rule. I will tell you that the fines are heavy. FTC violations for violating safeguards is $46,510. $46,510, and that's up to that dollar amount, and that's per violation. So a lot of money as it relates to violations of the safeguards rule. Again, you can get that information from NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association. I want to turn our attention now to the law firm of Hudson Cook. I hold in my hands, hot off the press. This was released just in December. Car Law, the F&I Legal Desk Book. We talk about this a lot in our webinars and the in-dealership training that we do around the country, and also the workshops that we do here at our home office in Warrenville, Illinois. But this is the 9th edition, just came off the press in December. It's now 21 chapters. A new chapter was added on the Americans with Disabilities Act and how it affects your websites, and the fact that the dealer is under the umbrella of that and has to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act because of how it relates to the things that we have on our website. So they've added that chapter, 21 chapters. It's over 400 pages now. And again, Tom Hudson, now the chair emeritus, partner emeritus of this, and 20 other attorneys are the authors of this 9th edition. I want to begin by getting into what we talked about and John read about the dealership responsibility as it relates to the threats, and we call this the Big Nine, and that's referred to that way in Car Law, the F&I Legal Desk Book, and that's found in the introduction to F&I, Chapter 1 section. It's written by 3 attorneys. Number 1, of course, is Tom Hudson, the partner emeritus now of Hudson Cook. Also authoring that is Michael Benoit. Michael is the chairman now of the law firm of Hudson Cook, and also our good friend Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson is their partner, Hudson Cook partner from the law firm in Oklahoma City, and he's also the editor-in-chief of the Spot Delivery newsletter, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But on that chapter on the introduction to F&I, part of that talks about the hostile environment threats. The hostile environment threats that we face as a dealer, and just what we have to look forward to as our attorneys or other people that we work with get involved in litigation, and they come after us and make our lives somewhat miserable. So here's the big 9, not necessarily order and an order of importance, but I think pretty close. Here's how they're listed by Hudson Cook. Number 1 is class action lawsuits. Number 1 is class action lawsuits. Class action lawsuits obviously involve groups of claims by similarly situated customers. So similarly situated customers, the same problems, whatever, they become plaintiffs involved in a class action lawsuits. Hudson Cook tells us that the three primary reasons for class action lawsuits is number 1, discrimination. Number 2, payment packing. And number 3, the failure to make proper disclosures. So think about that. The discrimination, payment packing, and failure to make proper disclosures. We look at NADA for help with this, and especially as it relates to 2 programs with respect to discrimination. And we've talked about this before, but attorney Randy Henrik, also from the FTC regulations, my friend from Reynolds & Reynolds, Terry O'Loughlin, will tell you that these 2 programs by NADA provide you potentially with a very sound defense whenever you're hit for discrimination as it relates to our business in the 2 areas of dealer participation and also the pricing of your F&I products and services. So the one that NADA came out with in 2014, written by NADA's Paul Mitri, you know that name. Paul is Senior VP, Regulatory Affairs, Chief Counsel for Financial Services, and this is the Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program, NADA's Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program. This is the program where you set a rate above the buy rate, the standard dealer participation rate that you charge each and every customer. Let's say you elect to go 2 points. The buy rate's 5, the customer rate would be 7. The buy rate's 6, the customer rate would be 8. So if you elect to go 2 points, you never go above the 2, but there's 7 allowable reasons that you can drop based upon discussion with the customer to attain or get their business. It's the NADA Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program. Customer doesn't necessarily see this. It's filled out by the individual that's handling the transaction with the customer, and within 2 days, someone reviews it in their dealership. It goes in the dealer file. A copy goes to the finance source that buys your paper. But this is all part of the NADA program, the Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program that NADA came with in 2014. The other program, as it relates to product sales, a little bit more recent, 2019, so it's not even 3 years old yet, is the Driven Publication for Voluntary Protection Products, a model dealership policy for voluntary protection products. This program, the recommendation is you talk with your attorney, your house counsel, and you develop standard retail prices for all of your products. Standard retail prices for all of your products. You don't increase that dollar amount, but there's 5 allowable reasons that NADA Legal recommends that you can drop that price to attain and get the customer's business. The NADA Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program. Our good friend Terry O'Loughlin, in one of his writings, he talks about, and again, Terry's the Director of Training for Reynolds. He's been that title since 2006. Prior to that, he was 17 years with the Attorney General's office down in Florida, where he led a task force that really investigated and prosecuted dealers, manufacturers, and also financing and leasing customers as well. But in his article that he wrote last year, he talks about the 3 major foci, meaning plural of focus, the 3 major foci of the CFPB and the FTC. Focus number 1 is fair lending and dealer participation. Fair lending and dealer participation. So the Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program certainly addresses that. fair lending, and dealer participation. And you'll remember in December 13, January 14, and about 2 years after that, you had Ally, you had American Honda Finance, we had Fifth Third Bank and Toyota Motor Credit Corporation were all hit with the same charges in engaging in an ongoing nationwide pattern or practice of discrimination against African Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanics, in that they're being charged higher APRs with similar credit profiles. So that has not gone away. And what Terry talks about is the Biden-Harris administration and what we're facing as it relates to their pursuit of not necessarily equality, but their pursuit of equity. So one of the ways to protect yourself by Terry, his recommendation, are these two programs, the Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program and the Model Dealership Policy for voluntary protection products. So 3 major foci. Number 1, fair lending and dealer participation. Number 2 is your optional voluntary protection products. And NADA talks in depth about that. NADA's Paul Petrie. We want to eliminate terms like add-ons or ads or the other things that we hear in the field, ancillary products and services. And they certainly recommend the phrase optional voluntary protection products. Optional voluntary protection products. And Terry O'Loughlin picks up on that in his article as it relates to the 3 major foci. The optional voluntary protection products in 3 areas. Number 1, how they're priced. Number 2, how they're presented. And number 3, how they're sold. How they're priced, how they're presented, and then number 3, how they're sold. And then number 3 is what Terry talks about as far as what the CFPB and FTC have announced that they're going after, is the abolition of arbitration agreements. The abolition of arbitration agreements. So that's the big 3, the 3 major foci. Abolition of arbitration agreements, the optional voluntary protection products, how they're priced, presented, and sold, and then the finance reserve, the dealer participation as it relates to discrimination. So if we're doing that, we're providing ourselves with some real protection as it relates to that, as it relates to these class action lawsuits. Payment packing is an interesting thing. Payment packing. The National Association of Attorneys General have ruled that payment packing is illegal, and they defined it and issued a resolution against it all the way back in 1999. So what are we, 20 years or so with respect to that. They define packing this way. Payment packing is the deceptive practice of misrepresenting monthly payments to consumers during auto sales and lease negotiations in order to facilitate the sale of finance and insurance products and services. That's the definition of payment packing. It's alive and well today. It's alive and well in many stores that I go into in one very simple reason, and that's the fact that we are quoting payments from a standpoint of payment ranges. If you're quoting payment ranges and not giving the customer every possible option within that range, you're playing with fire. Think about it for a minute, whether you're using a handheld calculator that I had to use back in the 1970s when I got into an F&I, or everything today is total technology. You need to know 3 things to quote a payment. You need to know 3 things to quote a payment. Number 1, you need to know a rate. Number 2, you need to know a term. And number 3, you need to know an amount financed. So you apply either with your calculator, Texas Instrument calculator, factor book, whatever it is, or all the technology we have now, you apply those 3 things together, and what you get is a monthly payment. You do not get a payment range. So for example, if I'm financing $20,000, 5 years, 60 months, annual percentage rate 12.5%. So the rate's 12.5%, the term was 5 years and 60 months, and the amount financed is $20,000. You apply that together, the monthly payment is $450, period. It's not $450 to $459. It's not $450 to $475. It's not $450 to $455. The monthly payment is $450. So again, deception. Think about that. And the definition, the resolution of payment packing. Payment packing is the deceptive practice of misrepresenting monthly payments to consumers during auto sales and lease negotiations in order to facilitate the sale of our finance and insurance products and services. Don't let that happen to you. So again, the first 2 reasons for class actions primarily, We're into discrimination and payment packing. And the number 3 is failure to make proper disclosures. Failure to make proper disclosures. And one way that we fail to make proper disclosures, I hold in my hand the current Texas retail installment sale contract for rentals and rentals. Every time they redo this, it gets longer and longer. It's now 28 inches long. It's now 28 inches long. The top left-hand corner has the buyer's name and address. Right-hand corner is the seller creditor, and that is the dealer. So proper disclosures we have to make. But what I want to talk about in our time space today is how you begin the initial disclosure of this retail installment sale contract. And the fact that, like many attorneys say in their stores that I run into, we're not going to record customer presentations in F&I. However, we should just always assume that that customer is taping our presentation. So if we think about that, obviously not only do we need to be concerned about F&I and the law, but words really do in fact matter. And Truth in Lending tells us that you have to give this to the customer, you hand it to them before you actually go over the contents of this retail installment sale contract. In fact, if you go down to the bottom, this is federal law, it's on all of your contracts, it says, you confirm, this is the customer confirming this because they're going to sign it. You confirm that before you signed this contract, we gave it to you. We gave it to you. Hudson Cook Car Law says you hand it to them. You hand it to them. We gave it to you, and you were free to take it and review it. You acknowledge that you have read both sides of this contract, and ultimately you're going to sign down below. So we gave it to you. We talk about it in training. You give it to them before you show it to them. Where the old days was we would lay the contract out flat on the table, go through it, some cases line by line, other cases just the 5 disclosures of the federal disclosure box, and we were pretty much done with sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here. We do that now, and we're violating the Truth in Lending Act. So we want to give this to the customer, not fold it up like we're trying to not disclose something or hide something. You hand it to them exactly like this. I'm going to hand mine to John Anderson and just give an example of how you might do this, recommendation by Hudson Cook and also by our good friend Dave Robertson at AFIP. Please remember, I'm not an attorney and don't pretend to be, so certainly not giving you any legal advice. So here we go. John, here's your completed retail installment sale contract in its entirety for your review. Mr. Customer, take your time with it, no rush. Keep it as long as you like. John, you might begin by checking the information up here in the top left-hand corner. Let's first of all make sure that your name, address, county, and zip code are correct. And John, I'll certainly be happy to answer or discuss with you any question or concerns you might have as well. Then after a couple of seconds, if he doesn't say anything, I might come back and say, John, may I ask you if I may, what part of this contract would you like me to go over with you? And at that point in time, it's totally spontaneous. The customer can say to you whatever they want. Most people will give it right back to you, and now you complete your actual disclosure of the contract. So once again, how does that maybe sound? What can we say? Recommendation by Hudson Cook and also the law firm of Hudson Cook and AFIP. Mr. Customer, here's your completed retail installment sale contract in its entirety for your review. You hand it to them. Folks, take your time with it, no rush, keep it as long as you like. You might begin by checking the information here in the top left-hand corner. Let's make sure that your name, address, county, and zip code are correct. And folks, I'll certainly be happy to answer any questions or comments you might have about the contract itself. And now it's up to them to do what they want to do. So again, from class action lawsuits, we've kind of addressed the big 3, discrimination, payment packing, and failure to make proper disclosures. Number 2 on the list in car law is referred to as big verdict non-class suits. Big verdict non-class suits. So they're not class action, but the plaintiffs are awarded large punitive damages, and they're designed to punish the dealer and the dealership's behavior. So big verdict class action lawsuits and big verdict non-class lawsuits can take a dealership out of the game forever. Number 3 is FTC enforcement actions and penalties. Federal Trade Commission enforcement actions and penalties. In our classes, we talk about UDAP, UDAP. People say, well, what's a UDAP? UDAP stands for Unfair and Deceptive Acts and Practices. Unfair and Deceptive Acts and Practices. The Federal Trade Commission has UDAP statutes. The CFPB, we'll talk about that next, has their version of the UDAP statutes, and all states have UDAP statutes as well. But UDAP stands for Unfair and Deceptive Acts and Practices, and our good friend Terry O'Loughlin, again, formerly with the Attorney General's Office, and now Director of Compliance for Rentals, will tell you that the UDAP test, the UDAP test or standard of enforcement, is really the answer to this question. Does the activity or practice have the tendency or capacity to mislead a consumer? Does the activity or practice have the tendency or capacity to mislead a consumer? That answer is overwhelmingly yes. You got a real problem as it relates to UDAP. So don't let that happen to you. Number 4 is the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They bought a vowel with their version of UDAP. They added another A, so it's UDAAP. That A stands for abusive. So with the CFPB, it's unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices. And remember, abusive means to misuse, use wrongly, or mistreat customers. By the way, at the FTC side, the penalty for UDAP is up to $43,792. Up to $43,792. And with the CFPB, the penalties are extremely heavy. You have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 is called any violation. That's currently up to $5,953 per day. Think about that, per day. Tier 2 penalty is reckless violation. That's up to $29,764 per day. If you think that's a lot, here's Tier 3. Tier 3 penalty, knowing violation. Knowing violation is now $1,190,546 each day that you are in that violation. Don't let those things happen to you. So that's the big 4: class action, non-class lawsuits, FTC, CFPB. 5, of course, we have state attorneys general. They are the primary law enforcement officer in the state. Many of them know that the AG also stands for aspiring governor, so they like to attack us and our industry because they know that there's more voters out there than there are dealers. So you can see which way that they swing when it comes to their proclamations and what they want to accomplish. Federal regulation, that's ever changing, and right now we're working on certainly the updated safeguards rule for the year. State legislation comes and goes. Then we also have state consumer credit officials. Sometimes they're a real thorn in the side of the dealer, depending on where you're from and who that credit official might be. They're inconsistent, and many of them do not understand the retail automobile business, so state consumer credit officials are difficult. And last but not least are certainly ultimately public opinion battles. Public opinion battles where you have just unfavorable publicity, and as a result of that, you have media exposés that are a result of your class action lawsuits and high dollar regulatory fines. So don't let those things happen to you. And then we want to wrap it up with the hostile environment as it relates to information from Hudson Cook as well, and it talks about exposure. And real quickly, what do they mean by exposure? Number 1, the dealer is the creditor in a typical credit transaction. The dealer is the creditor in a typical credit transaction. What that means is the dealer owns the transaction documents. Number 2, the dealership is responsible for employee compliance. What that means is the dealership can be sued for the violations of its untrained people. Number 3, the dealership employee simply must comply with applicable state and federal law. Why is that true? Employees are the voices and faces of the dealership, and with the role of employee comes a tremendous amount of responsibility. Number 4, the consequences of employee noncompliance are hefty. We just talked about that. We have heavy fines. We also have jail time related to many of this litigation and lawsuits. And my personal favorite, and this is found on pages 9, 10, and 11 of car law, is you don't always know what you don't know. You don't always know what you don't know. So in reality, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You don't always know what you don't know. I will tell you that, why comply? Why comply? Well, yeah, we're supposed to. It's federal, state law. It's UDAP violations. It's a moral responsibility, an ethical responsibility, whatever. But I would say to you, why comply? For many dealers, for many reasons, the answer is quite simple. And that is, it's simply become too expensive not to comply. Think about that. It's simply become too expensive not to comply. Jotted down 6 reasons for you. Don't have time to go in depth. Reason number 1, litigation. Litigation. Think of your attorney fees and court costs. Reason number 2, fines. Heavy fines. Number 3, imprisonment. Imprisonment. For example, money laundering statutes, whatever, jail time up to 20 years. OFAC violations, jail time up to 30 years. It goes on and on. The other half of the big six is consent orders and consent decrees that many times a dealer has to do or are required to do things for years to comply with a consent order. And the last two are the R's. The first R is reputation. Reputation, both business and personal, and if that goes south, if that goes sour, the second R, or last R, is the two R's of your repeat and referral business. So again, why comply? The big six: litigation, fines, and imprisonment, consent orders, consent decrees, reputation, business and personal, and finally repeat and referral business. Our commitment is to help you do business the right way. As we always say, we encourage you to develop your mission statements, your value statements. Mission statement, very simply, every customer knows what they're getting, they agree to buy it, they know why they need it, and they feel good about it when they leave your dealership. What a tremendous thing to have happen. Our value statement that we use as an organization at the American Guardian Group of Companies, very simply, we endorse and teach. We endorse and teach the industry standard and best practices that are recommended by NADA, by AFIP, by NAMAD, the National Association of Minority Auto Dealers group, by AIADA, the American International Automobile Dealers, that's the import dealers, and last but not least, by our company, our internal Seller Code of Conduct for Retail Sales, which serves as a guide to the proper sales practices for all retail sellers of AGWS products and services. Again, our goal is to help you maximize deal profit, but as always, to do it the right way. And before I use it back to John to just quickly close it out, the right way is in a manner that's consistent with good customer relations and sound business practices. Have a great first quarter of 2022. We'll hope we'll get some inventory and some things happening with that. But again, number one hot button topic: compliance and ethics, F&I and the law, selling with integrity, and the need really now for every dealership in America, RV, marine, power sports, commercial trucking, and auto, to develop an in-house, effective, ongoing compliance and ethics program, now commonly referred to as a CMS, or compliance management system. With that, Mr. Anderson. John?
Thank you very much, Bob. Great content there, and just wanted to let everybody know about our March 2022 webinar and our couple topics here. Successful menu selling, menu introduction, and presenting options will be the three topics that we will cover. That should be available in the next couple of days. Today is March 30th, so we're going to make that available on the website in the next few days once we get these processed. So thank you guys for joining, and have a great day.
Thank you all.